welcome everyone. This is the NBA Triple Double Show presented to you by SportsMemo TV and the Break the Playbook cast of shows. And as always, Ronald Cabang is in the house to join with me to assess and break down and find the golden nuggets that are out there in the NBA and the trio of games in the playoffs tonight. Last night we saw, excuse me, last night we saw the Sixers. There's a term for it, but I can't say that on the air. But they played horribly bad, scoring. You know, I don't know what happened there. Hopefully that they can put behind them and they can move on to Toronto. But now the pressure is on them, as we talked about yesterday, Ronald. You know, you're up 3-0, and all of a sudden they win that first game, and now hey, if we win the second game, we go back to Toronto, we could force a game 7, and it kind of feels that that's where we're going. But that game is not today, but that's a recap of last night. You know, the Nets and the officiating continue to be horrid in that matchup. I wonder how many fouls actually KD actually had that would have been called in the regular season. In other words, called where he was fouled and it wasn't called. But anyway, you know, they are a team that went through living hell all year and had to overcome so many obstacles that it just became impossible.
Yeah.
But we're both on a good stretch here in NBA against the spread over at SportsMemo. You're on a 9-3 clip. And mine is actually it's a similar percentage, 75.4 I think I am against the spread over the last 19, I guess it is. Something like that. We tend not to really focus on records, as we were talking off, before we went live here.
Yeah.
It's one day at a time. You grind it out, and suddenly you realize that, wow, hey, I'm hitting 75% here. This is pretty good. And it keeps you away from the bad stretches too. Like when you have those stretches where you're 40%, and you're not focused on that. Anyway, welcome to the show, and let's get started with the 3 games. And we have let's back up here just a little bit. We have the Atlanta Hawks taking on the Miami Heat tonight. The Heat look to close this out. They lost by 1 point in Game 3. They won by double digits in their last win in Game 4. This is Game 5. And they're favored by 7. I thought it would actually be higher, Ronald. And we have a total of 227, I believe. 217, I'm sorry, coming into this show. So let's start off with your break down this game and any best bets that you see available.
Yeah, for me, I think the Heat pretty much have just dominated this series. It really took a huge fourth quarter comeback from Atlanta to avoid the sweep in Game 3. I think the Heat take care of business here. I think like you mentioned, I feel like the line should have been higher. I know it opened up at 7. I think it touched 7.5 last night as well. And then now, I woke up and it's 6.5. So it seems like there's some money going towards the Hawks here. But to me, I don't really see it. A lot of the trends I'm seeing also are pointing towards the Heat. 13-2 straight up, 11-4 against the spread as home favorites in conference games against teams with a winning record. And they tend to start strong in these situations as well. Average first quarter margin is plus 5 points and about plus 8 point margin at half. And then on the Hawks side, you have a couple situations to fade them. 3-13 straight up and against the spread as road dogs in conference games against teams with a winning record. So we're looking at playoff contender type teams throughout the regular season, and that also includes the playoffs. And then and in these situations they failed to cover 9 straight games. And then if they struggle scoring against a specific team, they're 5-10 straight up and 4-11 against the spread after scoring less than 100 points in their previous matchup. And the Heat limited them to under the century mark in the last game. So I feel like I just feel like this is a matchup that the Heat just take care of. I feel like there's a chance that they win by double digits here. Like what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely on this side, and let's put that chart back up that we had. And you can see this is just playoff rankings of the teams that are in the playoffs. But I do believe all the arrows are pointing towards Miami. And I haven't seen that in any playoff game in years. But Obviously, Miami is the number one seed. I think they're undervalued as a team right now. Going maybe not into this game specifically undervalued, but like betting them the next series and then ultimately taking on probably Boston. Well, actually, they will face Boston next.
Yeah, they closed it out.
Yep,
They closed it out. Yeah.
yep. So that could be the Eastern Conference championship series right then and there. There's I don't think there's two teams playing better than them right now in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but we'll have to wait and see. Things change like Minnesota and Memphis. We're going to be talking about that game shortly, and that series is, I mean, that's all over the map. You just don't know who's showing up on any given night. But in this particular situation, I do want to mention one thing about, head coach Eric Spoelstra he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach. Last season, he was awarded being one of the top 15 greatest coaches in NBA history, and well deserved, certainly. I can remember when LeBron left Miami, everybody thought that LeBron was making Spoelstra a great coach when Spoelstra was just 38 years old. Obviously, that wasn't the case, and he's a tremendous coach. He's going to make sure that the players see what happened to the Sixers because of the simple fact that Miami has won their 3 games by a lot, double digits, averaging 14.2 points per game. And that includes the 1-point loss to the Hawks. In their 3 wins, Ronald, they're beating the Hawks by 18.3 points per game. Playoff favorites of 4.5 or more points that have outscored their current opponent by an average of 10 to 15 points per game have gone 27-6 straight up. 82% winners, 20, 11, and 2 pushes against the number. That translates to 65% cashing betting tickets, including a stellar 20, 11, and 2 under record over the past 5 playoff seasons. So for this game, I'm with you on Miami, and I think the lean is to the under. Let's move on to the next one here, and that is going to be the one that we were talking about. The volatility of this series is pretty high in my opinion. It's been a lot of fun to bet in game because the totals are all over the place during the game. But we have the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Memphis Grizz tied 2-2. And after a game, before the series started, did you really think this was ever going to be 2-2? I thought maybe the series would go 4-0 in favor of the Grizzlies. But
so I did a preview, series preview, and I mentioned how closely matched up these two teams are. I knew that this was going to be a battle. Obviously, similar to like how the Celtics and the Nets were, right? Every single game, even though the Nets got swept, every single game was by a slim margin. That's what I kind of thought this was going to be. The Grizzlies kind of winning majority of the games by just like a slim margin. But yeah, I thought this was going to be a long series. I thought it was going to be a 6-game series, in my opinion, to start out with. So yeah, but this game specifically, this is a tough one. I feel like the Grizzlies had to face the refs in that last one. Like Coach Jenkins said, it was probably one of the worst officiated games that I've seen in a long time. But we mentioned in this show before, these two teams match up well. I still give the coaching advantage to Jenkins though, and ultimately that's the reason why I chose them to advance to the next round. Last time these guys played in Memphis, the line was -7 for Memphis, and this time around it's -6. So it's come down a point, and so that to me that's a little bit sketchy. But I do think that they win this game straight up. Right now, I'm still on the fence on whether or not they cover the 6 points, but the trends are pointing towards Memphis and the over. On the Grizzlies side, 14-5 straight up, 13-6 against the spread, going from a road to home. So when they travel, and then in a previous matchup loss in these revenge situations, 14-6 straight up and 13-7 against the spread. And then on the over side, we're looking at the Wolves. When they're on the road, they tend to play to the over, 11-4 to the over as road dogs in conference games against teams with a winning record, and 14-5 to the over going from home to road. So in those travel situations here. So for me, I'm looking at the Grizzlies and the over. I see Ninja 13 in the YouTube chat. What do you guys think about the Memphis team total over? I'm aligned with that. Those are my leans, Grizzlies against the spread and the over. So in that case, the TTO should look pretty good.
Yeah, 119.5. I like the overplay too with Memphis. Probably the over in both of the team totals. But I'm gonna do something a little radical. It's not radical to me, Ronald, because you've heard me talk about it so often with live in-game betting.
Hmm.
But I'm willing to do the following, and it's supported by a bet on the Minnesota Timberwolves first half. So we're getting +3. That was the last I checked a couple hours ago. We're getting +3 to bet them, and it's an if-then type of situation. So let's say that that is right, and they're leading at the half. I then will go live in game during halftime and bet Memphis to cover it, because right now Memphis is what, 7.5 points. Obviously, if we're right on the first half bet on the Wolves, and they're actually leading at the half by just a couple of points, that line for Memphis is probably
Hmm.
going to be 2.5, maybe 3.5 point favorite. Might even be lower. It's not going to be 7.5, and that's the whole point. The playoff teams coming off a road loss of 3 or fewer points in Game 4 have produced a 20-6 straight up record for 77% winners, 17-9 against the number for 65% winning bets. Historically, home favorites of 2.5 to 7.5 points that trailed at the half ended up winning the game has occurred 122 times in the playoffs over the last 20 years. Guess what the record is? 74, 44, and 4 against the spread for 63%. But that's based on the closing line. So that is assuming, like, if this would happen, we would
Hmm.
be betting Memphis -7. But if they're trailing at the half, obviously it's not going to be 7. It's going to be much closer to pick 'em. And there's 122 games of historical evidence that suggests that if this team, Memphis, is trailing at the half, you want to get the hammer out here. I'm not saying you bet more than you should, or you double your normal bet. You should definitely bet maybe 10% more than your normal bet. So if you bet $100, you add 100, make it 110 on that situation, because I do think I'll become very bullish on Memphis if they're tied or trailing at the half based on what I
Hmm.
just said. What do you think?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've talked about Memphis and their depth throughout the whole season, and this series specifically too. So playing them in the second half, if they're down, I mean that plays to their advantage as well. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and in fact, using the live in-game data that I've been accumulating in my database, if the favorite is 7, I'm sorry, the favorite is closing line is 2.5 to 7.5 points, and they're trailing at the half. Based on the data that I've collected over 5 years, 79% against the spread in the playoffs would be Memphis then to come back and win. And I,
Hmm.
I can't I can't turn my head away from 79%. Anyway, little excitement there. So let's move on to our third and final game, which is the Phoenix Suns, who have suddenly, like, kind of disappeared from the media radar here. Maybe it's because they play late at night and East Coast isn't paying attention, but they got their hands full right now. Another series that I did not see even being. I thought maybe the Pelicans would be lucky to win a game.
Hmm.
But it's 2-2 going into Game 5, and we all know Game 5s usually determine the winner of the playoff series in a 7-game series. But in this matchup tonight, I gotta side with the Suns to bounce back and finally play, but they're missing that superstar player too.
Hmm.
What do you think here, Ronald?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Booker's injury is such a big thing to overcome for the Suns. They basically been just going back and forth in this series so far. And Booker's injury, the first game he got hurt, they did well. The whole bench and everyone stepped up that game. And then in the last game, the Pelicans put Herb Jones on CP, and CP struggled with his length and physicality. I think he's Herb Jones has proven himself as an elite on ball defender. And with Booker gone, now he could just focus on Chris Paul, and that's gonna hinder the Suns' offense. And it's tough, because a lot of the trends are pointing towards the Suns here. But from watching the game, the Pelicans are looking real confident in how they're playing against this team. And in the playoffs, you really need that confidence and momentum on your side. During the regular season, when you close out the regular season, coaches typically talk about, we need to peak at the right time. And the Pelicans are doing that right now.
Sure
And,
are.
and on the Sun side, losing Book is a bit deflating. And they, like I mentioned, they took that first game, everyone stepped up. And then in the last game, they clearly missed him. The offensive, threat that they have, they weren't able to get to the line. No one was able to drive to the hoop other than Chris Paul, but you know, he was being defended like he was the only person that mattered, right? So like
Yep.
that's how the Pelicans were playing them. um and because of but the only reason why I haven't placed a bet on this game. But the Suns actually do really well in revenge spots, but obviously most of these games had Booker in them. But I would still lean towards them. I don't think I could get to the window at this point yet. I'm gonna still do some research, but some of the trends point their way. Suns 9-2 straight up, and 8-3 against the spread following a previous matchup loss, so in revenge spots. And if it's a double digit revenge spot, 6-1 straight up and against the spread. So
Wow.
they look good in these spots. And then on the Pelican side, 1-9 straight up and 2-8 against the spread, following previous matchup win against teams with a winning record. So playoff contenders. But that the thing is that includes the regular season. So we're looking
Hmm.
at some games that were prior to the trade where McCollum came in, and really that kind of flipped the switch for the Pelicans. And so, yeah, I'm still diving into this game here. But for me right now, I'm still leaning towards the Suns, but it's really tough right now with the momentum that the Pelicans have.
I think DeAndre Ayton's going to have a pretty big game tonight. And then your support of the Suns makes me think that might be a great prop bet. Points and assists, 22.5. And bet the over. FanDuel has it at minus 106. BetMGM's minus 115. Caesars minus 115. So obviously FanDuel has the best line right now to play over in that prop bet. Michael Bridges too.
Mm-hmm.
17.5 at FanDuel, minus 125, or 18.5, minus 110 at MGM. I don't fine tune things, Ronald, like a half point or a point. I'd rather pay less juice and 15 basis points in less juice to pay. I
Yeah.
don't mind doing the 18.5 with him too. So those two I think are going to help fill that void left by Booker. And of course, I think Chris Paul's number is 33.5 here. I think that's probably fair value.
Yeah.
I don't see one way or another on that. It seems like more people are betting the under on that. And when you're talking about teams like Phoenix, you can't get your brain to get around betting an under when they could explode for 50 points and assists. A
Mm-hmm.
guy like Chris Paul could do that in 3 quarters. Anyway, let's move on to our favorite part of the show. I used to say it was the most difficult. But our favorite part of the
Yeah,
show
but
is
when you
best bets.
yeah, but when you're winning, it's always going to be your favorite part.
That's right. That's right. And we are. I mean, for real, premium bets, 75% against the number, which would cover you're 9-3, and I'm like 15-5 or something, or 14-4.
Yeah.
So combined, that's pretty darn good record. So I think everybody should get over to Sports Memo and buy a subscription for the rest of the NBA playoffs from us, and I think they'll be very, very pleased. So let's start with the best bets. I'll start, and I'm going to stick with my little sophisticated strategy. I'm going to take the Wolves on an if-then. So I will bet them as a 3-unit play for first half only. So I'm going to get +3. My hope is that they obviously they cover, but my hope is that they're actually leading at the half, and that opens up our 79% against the spread opportunity to bet Memphis at whatever that live in game is during halftime. So that's my show best bet for the day. How
Mm-hmm.
about yours, Ronald?
I'm gonna go with the Heat. I know the line's going the other way here. It probably has to do with like Lowry and being out again. And I think they have a couple of injuries too that are game time decision. But to me, I think the Heat close this out today, possibly win by double digits. So for me, Heat is the play.
Awesome. I think so too. On that one, I concur, as they say. That word, you love to hate or love to say. But anyway, it brings us to the end of the show. We're gonna be back tomorrow, Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time for another edition of the Triple Double presented by SportsMemo TV. And until then, folks, just remember the two things I always say: bet with your head and not over it, and may all the wins be yours. Thanks very much for watching.